Good morning. Today is 30 March, the year 2009. I'm Dr. Dave Thompson, a volunteer at the Palm Springs Air Museum here in California. Part of our mission is to record and preserve the history of our country's military conflicts, especially World War II. As part of the Veterans History Project of the Library of Congress, we conduct interviews of veterans and civilians who participated in those conflicts. Today, I'm here at the museum along with fellow volunteer Jim Buchholz and special guest Joan Hauserman. And today we have the honor and the privilege of interviewing Private First Class Dan Hauserman. PFC Hauserman was in the 74th Signal Company in Europe during World War II. So we're going to talk to him about that and a lot of other things. Dan, so good to have you here.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay, well let me get you lined up here. Okay. Now, Dan, would you please pronounce and spell your full name for us, please?
Dan Martin Hauserman. That's H-A-U-S-E-R-M-A-N.
And when and where were you born?
Born in Cleveland, Ohio, in April 23rd, 1924.
1924. And that makes you how many years young now?
That makes me almost 85 in 3 weeks.
Ah, that's right. Yeah. Well, it looks like you're doing great. And your father, what was his name?
Earl F. Hauserman.
And what did he do?
He was used to he lit street lights back in just after the turn of the century when he was going to college.
The old lamplighter, huh?
Lamplighter, yes. Had a street light route instead of a paper route.
I'll be darned.
So
those were they
started his own company manufacturing movable office partitions back in 1913. And it was very unique in those days, taking what he started off with was movable window sash for plants, and he converted the window sash into movable partitions that they could take apart and move all through the plant to give supervisors offices and so on. So that grew into a very good partition. It was the beginning of the movable office partitions at that point. And they became those soundproof and thicker than plain steel. And it turned out to be quite a large company. And it went on for another 75 years or so. And finally stopped business and went into bankruptcy in 1982, or 1986. 1986.
Were you involved in it yourself?
I was involved for about 10 years. Yes, in the early 50s. In the 50s.
I want to go back to the lamplighter. Now, were those gas lights or
gas lights?
Oh, okay.
Gas lights in Cleveland. While I was going to Case Western
Right.
Reserve.
Oh, yes.
Western Reserve University in those days.
Mm-hmm. And your mother, what was her name and her maiden
Her
name?
name was Mary Martin. The real Mary Martin.
The singer.
As far as I was concerned.
Right. And where did they meet?
They met in Cleveland.
Okay. And her ancestors, where did they all come from? How did
They came from Ireland, County Westmeath in Ireland.
Have you been there before?
I've been there twice now.
Uh-huh.
Nobody was there that I knew. My grandfather came from there in 1948 or 1848 during the potato famine, and settled in Toronto, Canada, for some years and then moved to Cleveland.
And what did he do in Cleveland?
He was, I'm not sure, offhand, not sure.
And your father, where his ancestors come from? How did he end up in Cleveland?
Father's ancestors came from the Würzburg area of Germany, and they came over in the early mid 1800s. There's about 3 generations there, and settled in Cleveland.
Did they still speak German? Yeah.
No, my father didn't. He was he was raised in Cleveland, and English was the thing.
And how many brothers and sisters did you have?
I have 7 brothers and 1 sister. There's 9 of us all together.
And can you name them all for us, please?
Yeah. Fred, Gene, Ben, John, Dick, Sam, Bill, Tom, Dan. I'm Dan, the youngest.
Three letters was about 1 syllable was about all they could handle, I guess. You do that real fast, like you did a while ago.
Yeah. Fred, Gene, Ben, John, Dick, Sam, Bill, Tom, Dan.
And your sister, what
Took
was
some
her?
practice.
So
My sister's name was Jean.
we had to, for our fraternity, learn the Greek alphabet, and you had to do it real fast.
Yeah.
Boom. And your sister, and how many are still alive? And who's still
Well, there are
alive?
5 of us still alive. I'm almost 85, and I have brother Tom, who's 88,
And where does he live?
and he lives in Pennsylvania. And brother Bill, who's 90, be 90 in November. And
Where is he?
he's in Cleveland. And I have a brother Dick, who is he was in he used to be in Vail, Colorado. In fact, he's one of the founders of Vail.
Yeah.
And Dick is 93, coming up, 92 at the moment.
Named Vail.
And
Steamboat Springs.
he was very much involved in Vail back in the late 60s, 70s, the early Vail, and one of the founders and directors, right from the beginning.
And what did you, Joni? You said what did you just say?
Dick was
Speak up.
they called him the legend because he named Vail, was the first one who built a house in Vail, and he named Steamboat Springs. And he's on the board of directors of Arnold Palmer's.
He was an architect by schooling, and designed the Vail logo that's present today, and all the Steamboat Springs logo that they have.
President Ford used to go to Vail quite often, did he not?
Yes,
Yes,
knew
he
him
was a
well.
good friend of
I'm sure
President
he
Ford.
was, yeah.
Yeah.
He was just honored by being brought into the Arnold Palmer Hall of Fame kind of situation in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Good friend of Arnold Palmer. He started the first Arnold Palmer Golf Academy at Vail.
And then we have.
Then we have my brother John, who is 95, and he lives in North Carolina, Lake Toxaway, North Carolina, and is a good golfer and still plays 9
Really?
holes of golf.
Wow, that's wonderful. That's great. Yeah.
But
And which ones of your brother were in the service during World War II? Did
yeah,
you say?
my brother Tom was in the Coast Guard and stationed in Philadelphia area on a fireboat. He was director of a fireboat, and my brother Bill was in the Navy. He ended up as a lieutenant commander, and was mostly stationed in the East Coast, he had a couple runs on out in at the Pacific, but basically training and so on. And my brother Dick was in Boston. He was in the Navy. He was in Boston. He was a ensign in the Navy.
Now, when you were growing up, was your family very religious? Did you go to church a lot?
Yes, my mother was a devout Catholic, and my father was a Lutheran when they were going together. And back in those days, the Martins were pretty strict about whom their youngest daughter was going to marry. So he had to change to his religion to Catholicism in order to marry. And they lived happily thereafter, but they both died young.
Oh. Do you remember the parish that you went to?
St. Anne's Parish in Cleveland Heights, Ohio.
Okay. And do you remember the house that you grew up in?
Yes, it was a red brick house on Fairmount Boulevard in Cleveland Heights. Pretty good size to handle 9 kids. A lot of bedrooms and a few baths.
And were you an altar boy?
I was in the choir.
Oh.
So I wasn't an altar boy at that time.
Yeah. Do you remember any of your favorite nuns that you had in grade school?
Favorite nuns? Gosh, they were practically all nuns. 8 years of grade school.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember which order you had?
I was the yes, it slips my tongue.
Ursuline.
Ursuline?
Ursuline sisters.
Ursuline. Thanks, honey. Ursuline nuns. Yeah, they were very good. They had a very friendly 12-inch ruler in their hand most of the time.
Yeah, we all know about that.
They put it to use upon occasions.
You remember your pastor.
Yeah, my pastor was the Father John Powers. He was quite a guy. Very good.
And what did you kids do for fun when you were growing up?
Oh, we shot marbles out in the play yard at recess.
Mm-hmm.
We had marble games going pretty regularly.
Yeah. Did you play any sports? Well, baseball and football,
Yeah,
stuff like that?
We had baseball games. Yeah, nothing
Did you
formal,
follow the Cleveland Indians?
but yes, very much so. Yeah, Cleveland Indians.
Did you go to any of their games?
Yes. Went to several. Yeah.
Do you remember some of their players that you liked?
Oh, gosh. Bruto.
Lou Boudreau, yeah,
Boudreau.
shortstop, yeah.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, they had, in '48, I think they went to the World Series, as I remember. Of course, that was later on from when you were
that's right.
growing up, yeah. Now, you grew up during the Depression, I assume, so what was that like for you and your family?
Well, my allowance was cut from 25 cents to 5 cents. I was pretty young in those days.
Yeah.
But it was, Dad had a tough time. He had to use his borrow and his life insurance in order to keep the plant moving.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a tough time getting war work. Finally, in fact, he just sort of camped in Washington for quite a while, trying to drum up war work that would fit in and keep their men going.
Mm-hmm.
So they ended up getting a contract for the Navy Corsairs landing gear doors, which were on all those, and landing mats for the South Pacific Theater there for airport making and improvised landing spots on the islands, and deck housing for Army tugs and various ships. Well, several other small items that fit into.
Now, when you were growing up, when you were a kid, did you have odd jobs and stuff?
I had very odd jobs. Several.
Like what?
Like, Dan, do this.
The youngest.
My older brothers, being the youngest.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of things.
Yeah.
I was kept very busy.
Did you have a paper route or anything
I had
like?
yes, I had a paper route. That was fun.
What did you? You remember the?
I delivered the Cleveland Press. The Cleveland Press is no longer in circulation, I don't think.
And where did you go to? Did you go to junior high or did you go right into high school?
No, I went right into high school, university school in Cleveland.
Was that public school?
No, it was a private school. It was a prep school.
Oh, but
So-
it was not a Catholic school though.
No, it wasn't a Catholic
Was there
school.
much of a change going from a Catholic school to this school for you?
Somewhat, but we still went to church all the time, of course.
Yeah.
No,
I meant to ask you, St. Anne's, how far was that from your house?
it was about a mile and a half. And we used to ride our bicycles to that and home for lunch.
Mm-hmm.
We rather they didn't have lunch too much. Then you either walked
brought
or
it,
ride a bike home.
And high school, how far was that from your home?
High school was about 3 or 4 miles. We had to go by car on that one.
You remember the first car you remember that your family had?
It was a 1930 Cadillac. And then during the Depression years, it went into a Chevrolet and a Plymouth in those days.
Did you take the streetcar to school?
Oh yeah, some of those years at grade school, we'd walk over to the about half a mile to the streetcar line and take the streetcar up to our street. Stopped at our street.
How much did that cost you?
Oh, I think it was 10 cents or something like that. 5 or 10 cents.
Did you play any sports in high school?
Just played. I was on football and wrestling team, and I pole vaulted for the track team. Co-captain of the track team.
What was your weight, wrestling weight?
Wrestling weight was 155, and I weigh 155 today by accident. And I weighed 156 when I got married.
Yeah, well, you stayed the same. That's great. Yeah. What position did you play in football?
Let's see, it was guard, I believe it was. Yeah.
Yeah. Remember the school mascot? High school.
University school was. Yeah, let's see. Yay. But the song was
Your fight song?
Fight team fight and yay, was kind of. That's gone back.
So, and do you remember any favorite teachers in high school that you had?
Visually, I remember them.
Or classes, or favorite classes that you had?
My least favorite class was Latin. My favorite class were most of the math courses and English. French was pretty good too.
Did you like history?
Trigonometry and various math courses.
So now, what year did you graduate from high school?
1942.
42. Okay.
They
Do you-
didn't have any typing. They didn't have typing in grade school
Right.
in those days. They didn't have typing in high school in those days. And they didn't have typing in college. So I never did learn how to type.
They had
Other
typing
than
for women.
Yeah, for the women. Yeah, I remember that too. Yeah.
No, not for men.
Yeah, right. And do you remember what you were doing December 7th, 1941?
December 7th, I remembered the commentator on the radio. I'm trying to remember his name. Famous one. My brother Dick got to know him later.
Yes.
Um,
Wrote a story on. Can't remember right now.
No, I forget. his
Edward
name.
R. Murrow, maybe? Or
No, before that.
Kaltenborn?
Well,
He was
any-
one who traveled
he,
around the world.
he was radio was
Oh.
the thing.
Lowell Thomas?
No,
It wasn't Lowell Thomas. Was it?
I don't know. I know him, but
But anyway, you heard it on the radio.
anyhow, he made the announcement that the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor.
And what did you think about that? Were you up on current affairs? Could you see something like that coming?
Yeah, well, somewhat, yeah. Somewhat. It was bad news for everybody. And I was ripe for entry into the Army, I can see that.
Yeah. So then, when you got out, were you drafted right away, or when you got out of high
After
school?
high school, then I went to Western Reserve University.
To which one?
Western Reserve
Reserve, yeah.
University.
Where your dad went?
I was there for one semester, and I was about to be drafted, and so I joined the enlisted reserve corps, which gave me, it allowed me to stay in college there until they drafted me.
Mm-hmm.
So I got one semester and part of the second semester, just a
Did you
couple
have?
of weeks.
Did you have a major? Do you have anything that you were particularly majoring in?
Yeah, in those days it was engineering. Most of my brothers took engineering, and my dad and so. So that came to a halt. And then when I got out of the service, I went to Loyola University in Los Angeles, and then I took general business administration there.
In high school, did you have any special girlfriends or anything?
Oh, I've forgotten all of them. High school.
Conveniently forgotten,
His wife was
since
listening.
John's
I'd
sitting next to
have
us.
to go back and look at the letters and see how they signed it.
Okay, so you got drafted. So where did you go first when you got into the Army, or the service?
First, drafted and went to Fort Hays in Ohio, induction station. And from there to Aberdeen Proving Grounds, Maryland, and they were the ammunition supply to the Air Force, bombs and various things. They had a basic training, general basic training session there.
That was still the Army Air Corps, probably.
It was
at that
Army Air
time.
Corps,
Mhm.
yes.
Okay.
And so I went through that. It wasn't easy. 3 months. And all summer. It was right in the middle of the summer. May through September or so.
Marching and doing all
A
this
lot
kind
of
of stuff.
backpack marching, and get used to it, guys, and tough drill sergeants.
Was there
really
anybody
tough.
from your hometown, or anybody? Did you know anybody that was there also?
No, not as such, you know. Knew of a few of them, but not such.
Yeah.
So It was good training.
Got in shape.
Lived through it, got in shape.
Yeah, and then from there, where did you go?
From there, went to Newport News, Virginia. Got out of a ship called a Liberty ship called the William Blount, B-L-O-U-T, I believe it is. There's that took us over to, that ship had a cargo all over the main deck of everything imaginable, tanks and vehicles and guns, mobile guns, and ammunition, lots of things.
And what unit were you in at this time?
This was in May of...
no, what unit were you in?
Oh, at that time I was still a replacement for the Air Force.
Okay.
So, there was about 250 men, soldiers in the hold.
And this would have been what month and what year approximately?
That was, that was around, that was October 1943. And it took almost a month, almost 30 days going across the...
Were you in a convoy?
We were in a convoy, a large convoy, and blackout conditions.
Germans probably were still harassing the convoys,
yeah,
right?
the main problem was we're on our way to Oran, Africa. The main problem was submarines. The U-boats were prowling all over the Atlantic, North Atlantic, looking for Liberty ships with cargoes.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but you didn't lose any
no,
in
we
your
didn't
convoy?
lose any. We had some alerts and so forth, but didn't lose any. The whole, one of the best of condition. I don't like to go to that hotel anymore. We had salt water for everything but drinking. There was, oh gosh, the bunks were hard as a rock, and there were 4 or 5 high, stacked floor to ceiling in the hole, huge holes all cleared up, and it was.
Did you get seasick at all?
It was. Everybody on the ship got seasick one time or another. That wasn't too bad, but they'd have. We lived down there virtually. We came up for air, you know. But they had trash cans at each of the 4 corners of the hole down there, and that everything goes in that. And in rough weather, they slid across the floor of the metal decking down there and tipped over, and it was a mess. No wonder everybody got sick there. But anyhow, we made it.
Now, when you got to Oran, North Africa, had it been secured by this
Yes,
time from
that was
Rommel
secured,
and stuff?
yeah.
Okay.
We had a base there, training base and so on for replacements coming in. And I was supposed to be assigned in short order, maybe about a week, something like that. Usually most of them are assigned to a unit. But this went out for 2 or 3 weeks, and I was getting an inferiority complex at that point. Nobody wants me. The Air Force didn't want me. They didn't have a mechanism for calling my specification. So I sat, and finally there's several of us in the same category. We volunteered to go to, there was an opening in the Signal Corps, the Amphibious Signal Company needed some men. They lost a number of them in Anzio. So we volunteered for that. Went over to Italy to Naples in there was a Liberty ship, another Liberty ship called the John W. Brown, and that Liberty ship came to be a good friend later on. It was one of the two in the country that was restored after the war and rebuilt, and it's now in existence. In fact, we took a trip on that. It was a 6-hour trip down to Chesapeake Bay in 2003.
Yeah, that's
very
amazing.
exciting.
I bet it was. Yeah.
I was the only one that has been on the ship.
That's it.
Yes, that's it.
Okay, here I can hold it. Yeah.
I was the only one that was on it.
That had been on it
that
back
had been
then.
on it in
I'll be
World War
there.
II.
That is
So
really
that was
special.
exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
It has about 12 guns spread around each corner of it for attacks, air attacks.
Mhm.
And we fortunately didn't have any attacks going over to Italy, but lots of alerts. The submarines were prowling, that one heavy, and they had some German air cover that were just dying to get a hold of some of us. That was in a 60-ship convoy. We went out into the bay in Oran, waiting for a convoy to come by, and there was a German activity, so we had to pull back into the harbor. It was too dangerous sitting out there. So we finally joined the convoy, and took about 12 days to get over that short distance to Naples. Sort of zigzagged around and stopped and go and so on. Went by Sicily, and Mount Etna was erupting at that time. And then we got over to Naples, and Mount Vesuvius was erupting. So we thought, gee, that's a bad omen, isn't it? What a way to start. But,
We have a diary of that too. He has a diary.
Oh, diary.
yeah, I have a diary.
And every day there's
Told about that trip.
Mm. And what was your training like there?
It was training for Signal Corps,
Right.
mostly Morse code and that sort of thing.
You still remember Morse code?
No.
And tell me again.
Oh, a few of them, SOS and this, that, and the other thing.
Tell me again what your outfit, what the duty. I mean, what was the primary purpose of
Well,
you guys?
It was started with the idea of supplying communication, signal communication between the combat engineers and the infantry when they unload onto a beachhead in an invasion. Like they'll go in, the infantry goes in first usually, and the combat engineers in a lot of cases goes in first to take care of the mines, deactivate the mines and so forth.
Mm-hmm. And you guys are attached to?
We're attached to, at that point we're attached to the 5th Army.
Yeah, I know that, but I mean, do you go in with the infantry or the combat engineers, or where are you in relationship to them?
We stay on the ship.
Or stay on the ship? Okay.
Yeah, and we furnish it from the ship.
I see.
so we want to make sure we don't get the ship doesn't get hit.
Yeah. Okay.
Which
So you
they
get
to
like
do.
the common.
We went in on a LST, which is landing ship tank,
Right.
pretty good size.
Speaking of that, Evansville, Indiana, where I'm from, it's on the Ohio River, and they built LSTs there, and they got one, kind of like yours, from World War II, and there was a crew of, actually, this was about 5 years ago, World War II veterans that sailed it. It was over in Europe somewhere. They sailed it across the Atlantic, up the Mississippi, I guess, and into Evansville. And I was on it last year when I went, because now they made kind of a little museum out of it, and you can tour on it. So
Yeah.
it was neat. Yeah.
Oh, they're a great ship. They're good size too.
They are big, yeah,
This-
Big.
huge.
I don't know what's
And
in
in
there
fact,
for.
there's several of them went out into the beach at San Rafael, not too far from Nice and Cannes, on that area in southern France.
Oh, okay.
So
Is that where you was
that's
your
where
first?
we landed there?
Was that at the same time as the Normandy invasion?
It was 2.5 months after Normandy,
Okay.
August 15th, Holy Day of Obligation.
The Assumption.
The Assumption. So we were protected. However, the ship next to us, with all of the other guys, about 200 of them were killed. The German plane flew over and dropped a guided missile right into a wrecked ship. That was destroyed. So we were lucky then.
Yeah.
I got a little ahead of myself, didn't I?
Well, we were talking about, you were explaining to me what you guys did, and we were talking about your training that you had in Naples.
Yes.
And so from Naples, is that where you went to, or
Well,
did you
we
go
went just up north of Naples, about 20 or 30 miles. It was secured, and we had a school there for six weeks, training school for signal work. Then from there, upon graduation, we were sent to Anzio, which was still in operation, but it was pretty well finished, almost finished. That was a very rough. There's a lot of people in our unit, the 74th Signal Company, that were lost in that. So we were sent as replacements for those, actually. And from there, we went up to Rome. That's when Rome was finally liberated. So we went down the main streets in Rome in trucks and so on as conquering heroes with flowers along the side and everything. They really welcomed us. We didn't know what to expect. But throwing flowers at our truck and everything else instead of grenades.
Dan, before you went into Rome, you had a lieutenant who wanted to go into Monaco, didn't you? When was that?
Oh, that was down in. That was in
France.
Southern France. Right after the invasion, after it was secured, his lieutenant wanted to go over and see what's going on at Monaco.
From Italy, you wanted to go over there?
This is from San Rafael.
That's
where
okay.
we
That
came
was
in
when you were over there later. Yeah.
And so I drove a jeep for him over to Monte Carlo. Went through the main streets, Monte Carlo. We never saw a soul anywhere. No Germans, fortunately,
Luckily,
and no gamblers. So that was.
You were the only gamblers.
That was good.
Yeah, really.
So we didn't stay very long.
Yeah. But in Rome, you got a good, warm welcome then.
Yes, warm welcome in Rome. It was declared an open city, for one thing, which meant it wasn't bombed or annihilated. Fortunately, too many artifacts.
Yeah.
Most of them were of that nature were the open cities in World War II. Paris, for instance, and Rome, and capitals, and so on.
Yeah.
Then from Rome, we went right down to southern Italy to it's an Italian name.
Sicily? Or?
No, shoot. To practice for to practice on a beach down south of Naples.
So, but okay, once the invasion is secure or whatever, then do you go and follow the infantry and the combat engineers inland as they
Yes.
you do?
Yes. Then we become part of the
And that's when
assigned to the army, or in case of in Italy, there were assigned to the 3rd Division, which has been a famous division all the way through history, which is part of this 5th Army in Italy at that time.
So you're in trucks and jeeps and stuff
trucks
like that.
and jeeps, yeah.
And do you you carry sidearms, or do you carry
Yeah.
weapons yourself?
For a while, they were carrying .03 rifles. And
Springfields.
also, then we got into carbines, which is a smaller rifle,
Right.
30 caliber rifle.
Did you come under fire in Italy at all?
No, but we had some. Let's see, we had a lot of bombing and so on, and shelling. We weren't too far back, enough to know that was sort of almost reminds you of the MASH movie today. Every once in a while the bombs goes up.
Yeah. So now you're down practicing on the beaches.
Practicing on for a landing invasion.
Were people was everybody kind of talking about the invasion of France and
No,
I mean it was a big deal,
really
but
didn't know.
you guys didn't know much about
That was
it.
just a guess, I guess. We didn't have CNN to tell us anything. But it turned out to be southern France. We kind of guessed that we were heading in that direction. So we didn't realize that they were going to have another one in the south to meet up with the north. We knew about the Normandy invasion. We didn't get too much information in those days.
So the purpose of your landing there was to then
To clean out the south and move on up and join forces at the Rhine, basically, which is what we did. We waited for someplace else to be assigned at Southern California, or Southern California.
You wish.
Southern, similar to that, Southern France. So we went on up through Nancy, in France, and on up all the way to the pretty close to the Rhine. We joined up with the third. There's the 7th Army. We were then assigned to the 7th Army. So we went towards the Rhine on the southern end of the Battle of the Bulge, which is going on about then. And the 3rd Army was up, and the 1st Army were up north, and the 9th were north. And they got the major brunt of it. And we're in the 7th down towards Strasbourg. So we had to pull back. One day we had to pull everything back and for 10 miles or so, 5 miles. And because the Germans had made a big push there, and that's where they got the groups in the north of us, the 9th and 1st.
And this was in the winter time. It was pretty cold, wasn't it?
Yes, it was right in the middle of winter. This was about it was about December, yeah. Yeah, so we finally got through up there.
Did you take many casualties along the way?
Our unit did not. We're far enough back.
They slept in tents. Where did you sleep?
But the rest of them did, yeah. The infantry and so on. So we weren't attached too much to the combat engineers and the infantry at that time, because the invasion was over. That was their purpose. So we're just sort of tagging along.
And how did you keep warm?
Oh, wasn't easy. We got the coats issued, so that was pretty good. Trying to find a place that's warm enough to sleep in. We commandeer a little railroad station and all kinds of buildings that were unoccupied at the time of the war.
Mm-hmm.
So
Otherwise, you'd be in tents or
otherwise
sleep.
tents, yeah.
Mhm.
We usually get tents.
Yeah.
Pitch these tents, about 7 or 8 man tents.
And what about food? Was that plentiful, or did you
Yeah,
have
it
to
wasn't too
eat?
bad. They had rations. It was all
Mhm.
C rations and K rations and so on. Lots of spam. But it was not too bad. They did a good job on supply.
Mhm.
Um,
And your I guess your officers, like your lieutenants and stuff, were they pretty good? The guys that
Yeah.
you had in your outfit.
yeah, they were very good, very good. Even the first sergeants were good.
So you get up to the Rhine. Where did you cross the Rhine?
Yeah, we
Yes.
finally crossed the Rhine.
Where'd you cross that?
Just up from Strasbourg, about 10 miles or so.
So were you going through Austria at this time, or?
No, this was in Germany.
Okay, you crossed
Okay.
from France into Germany?
France into Germany.
Okay.
That's right. Then we went through Germany, and they didn't have a toll gate there at that time to check in. We went.
You didn't get
right
the warm
down.
welcome you did in Rome, I guess.
No. However, there were a lot of Germans that weren't too keen on what had been happening, and every once in a while they'd be halfway friendly. Yeah. So we went to small towns, usually as the front moved towards Austria. That was the key to go towards Austria. Went to towns like Ulm, U-L-M, and I put those on the towns on my sheet there.
Yeah.
But from there, right on down to finally ended up in near Innsbruck. 4 miles from Innsbruck was a little town called Ilg or something like that. Small town where we were able to get an abandoned house and stayed in there.
Was there
but-
much resistance along the way?
yeah, we personally didn't have, but the rest of them
We're
that we were
fighting their
following
way through.
did have. Not too much by that time. Now we went up on the way down there. We went up to, went through Garmisch Partenkirchen.
The what?
Garmisch Partenkirchen. That's a famous ski resort now.
Okay.
And they had a huge mountain there called Mount Zugspitz. That's the highest mountain in Germany and Austria. So the Germans had a radio station up on top of that. Some of the members of our group, I wasn't involved in the first group going up there, but they go up on a cogwheel thing, and we got up top. We had some of our men in there already now, chased the Germans out, and so we were up there for maybe a few days, about a week, I guess. We took over manning that radio station there, while the other guys got some relief. So while we were up there, I found there was snow up there too. This was about May, around May. There's still a lot of snow up there, and I found a German SS dagger in the snow. So I commandeered this dagger. It's still in good shape. It has Solingen on it. Solingen made it. Famous knife, German knife builder. And so I put it in my duffel bag
Yeah, I can.
and carried it around in case my rifle didn't work someday.
They must have left in a hurry, the Germans.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they left in a hurry up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, they sure did.
Mhm.
So while we're up there, though, that was interesting. This sheer cliffs off the side of this radio station hut that went straight down around, it's around 6,000 meters, something like that. About 18,000 feet. And you could throw your, we had a place to dispose of our trash. Isn't that awful?
Or three countries too, weren't
What?
you could look at three countries.
Oh, you could see 3 countries from up there? Wow.
You could see 3 countries from there.
Yeah. You could see 3 separate
yes,
countries
yes,
from there.
Yeah, Austria, Germany, and
France?
Austria, Germany, and
Belgium?
Luxembourg, I think.
Mm-hmm.
On Italy.
Yeah, a small one. Basically Austria, Germany, and Switzerland. Pardon me, Switzerland.
Okay, so we were up on that great big
Up in Mount
mountain.
Zugspitz,
Yeah.
And about the end, I told about finding the SS dagger.
The dagger, yeah.
So basically, there was a fantastic view from up there, unforgettable view of the 3 countries, and the scenery was incredible. So the mission was accomplished as far as that radio station being operable on our side of the fence. So then that was pretty much all of it. We ended up next down at near Innsbruck, a little town, suburb, Vinsburg, really, and discovered a empty house that had been occupied by a Nazi doctor, and he is no longer there. We took that over, and just as the war ended, that was the end of it in Europe. Japan was still going, of course. We were waiting for where do we go from here. So we had no place to go. Nobody could call us, you do this, that, and the other thing. So we just made ourselves comfortable in the house there. There was about 7 or 8 of us in this one group of the 74th Signal Company. We discovered in the basement there were cases and cases right up to the ceiling of Rhine wine and cases of anchovies. And so we said, gee, I don't think we should leave those go to waste down there doing nothing. So for the next couple of weeks we were drinking Rhine wine and celebrating the end of this thing. And anchovies, and I don't touch anchovies anymore. That's the end of that. Because the more anchovies you eat, the thirstier you get for the Rhine wine.
Yeah.
So anyhow, then I was assigned to, we were waiting for assignment. We didn't know whether we were going to be going over to Japan next, the Pacific Theater, or whether we had enough points to get out, to go home and get out. So finally we found out I had enough points to get discharged. But then the proposition is hurry up and wait, heavy duty style. So finally we got sifted through the debris and paperwork and so on. So I was able to get a week pass to go to Scotland or England. So I did that, took over there and stopped off on Paris. And saw Paris for a little bit and went over to England. Traveled all over England and Scotland.
How did you travel? Did you have your own vehicle? Or
No, trains, mostly trains. Trains and thumb hitchhike. Different world then.
I meant to ask you, had you had any contact with your brothers that were in the service, or did you have any idea what was going on, what they were doing?
We wrote letters back and forth. V-mail letters in those days instead of email.
Right.
Email letters, I guess everybody knows they're photographs of what you write on a V-mail sheet, and they reduce it into a small, almost legible to read little sheet that they're able to send those over somehow electronically or something. I don't know what it was. A little faster service over there.
Yeah. So how did you get back home then, back to the States?
Oh, after that, then we waited and waited and waited some more. So by November, we were able to get discharged. And was sent, we went on, it was about the 18th of November, somewhere in there. Went on another Liberty ship, only they called it the Victory ship then. It was a modification of the old Liberty ship. They made it a little more usable for troops. And that was another rough ride too. Everybody's sick on that one. Again, down in the hold. They jammed as many as they could in one big hole. And they're still carrying cargo back to the States. So wasn't too much difference. It was a good, we went through the North Atlantic. Yeah.
Now, where did you dock?
Docked at, where did we go? Might have been Newport News again. I think it was, yeah, Newport News. Then we were sent to Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania, separation station there. Some more waiting and so forth. I finally got out December 1st, out of the Uncle Sam's Army. So then I was, we took a little time off, and I went back to Cleveland, home, and drove my mother out to the West Coast, to California. My older brother, Bill, was getting married in San Francisco. He was still in the Navy, but he was soon getting out. But took Mother out to the wedding and ran into a classmate of mine, or Army pal from the 74th Signal Company. He had graduated from Loyola University in Los Angeles. So he took me out to the campus. It looked great. So I applied for admission on the GI Bill, and that's where I went to college. 3.5 years, and I was through Loyola.
Yeah. Now, and had you met anybody special by this time?
Yes.
Girlfriend types?
A couple gals, but they weren't too special. And then I ran into this one gal that swept me off my feet. I went to a dance, Sunday afternoon dance that was given by the Newman Club. Newman Club was a Catholic social group. At Loyola? At Loyola.
No, it was at UCLA.
Well, no, UCLA, that's right. UCLA, and I came in a little late for this dance, and I missed a comment by this one lady who was a knockout. She had a beautiful dress on, and she, I went over and asked her to dance. I cut in on her. Wow. And she had a story to tell about that, my cutting in on her. I'd like to introduce my wife, Joan. Joan Hauserman.
Hi.
Now, she used to be Joan Weaver.
Weaver, okay. So finish that story up for us,
I was
Joan.
going to UCLA, and I was quite active in the Newman Club there. And the priest had asked me if I would be in charge of a big Halloween masquerade coming up a week or two later in October. And he said, we'll have a tea dance, and you can invite any of your friends. And also he said, you can invite some guys to help you with the decorations, because I'd like for you to do the decorating for the Halloween masquerade, and we're going to need pumpkins and corn stalks and things of that kind. So there were no girls going to Loyola University at the time, and Dan had heard about the Newman Center having girls there at UCLA. So
yeah, that was the purpose of my trip, I think.
So he decided to go over and find a girlfriend at UCLA. At
One
the
that
Newman
spoke
Center.
English.
Yes. And so I was not, we were dancing, and I was dancing with someone. I'd already announced to everyone, gee, you guys, we really need your cars. I need your cars this coming Thursday, because we need to go out in the cornfield and get corn stalks and pumpkins and things for this party. Well, he came late and did not hear that announcement. He didn't know I was in charge. He didn't know anything about the cornfield. And he cut in on me, and my mind is thinking about this party. And I said, do you have a car? He said, yes. I said, oh, good, good. He said, why? I said, are you free Thursday afternoon at 4 o'clock? And he just kept looking at me like he hadn't met a girl that was quite that, brazen. And he said, yes. And he said, why? Why do you want me to meet you at 4 o'clock? I said, oh, I want you to meet me because we're going to go out in the cornfield. And I was laughing about it. I thought it was a funny thing to say, not knowing that he didn't know what I was talking about. So and he looked kind
Sure
of
did.
he looked kind of strange, and I guess he thought, gee, women have changed since I left. This nice Catholic girl's changed a lot. So I said, well, you look kind of funny. Is something wrong? Oh, he said, no, everything's fine. I said, oh, good. Then I'll meet you in front of Royce Hall at 4 o'clock on Thursday afternoon. He said, okay. So that coming Thursday afternoon, he comes there, and I'm there with the other 4 guys with their cars. He said, who are all these people? I said, well, we're all going together. He said, we're all going out in the cornfield together? And I said, yeah. He just kept looking at me like he thought he couldn't imagine what had happened with the nice girls since he left. So I thought he was really cute, so I said, could I ride with you? He said, oh, sure. So we start going out toward the farm, where I'd arranged with the farmer to give me some corn stalks and pumpkins. And of course, that's not farm anymore. It's all built up. But anyway, at that time, we went out. And we almost got out there, and I saw a beer store, and I said, oh, pull over there and get some beer for the guys. He really was in shock. So when we got out to the cornfield, and all the other guys, they got out of their cars and started opening their trunks. And he just kept looking at me kind of funny, and I said, well, get the trunk open so we can get the corn stalks and pumpkins in. And that was our first meeting.
And tell us a little bit about you. So you're, what was your maiden name?
My maiden name was Weaver, Joan Weaver.
And where did you grow up? Where were you born? Where did you grow up?
I was born in Kansas City, Missouri. And then when I was about 9, my family moved to Arkansas, to Rogers, where Walmart started, but that was before Walmart. And we were in Arkansas for quite some time. My father was in the restaurant business, and I was an only child. And my mother was concerned about my growing up there. There was great prejudice at that time. My father, fortunately, was Protestant. My mother was Catholic, so we were accepted and got along fine. But it was kind of sad, the fighting between the sort of on the Mason-Dixon line situation in Arkansas. But anyway, then when I was a little older, I went to the University of Arkansas for a year in Fayetteville, and then I went to California and started to go to school in Los Angeles, at Mackle-Hart College. I was getting my degree in drama, and so I went out to UCLA to take some special drama courses, speech and drama courses, and that's how I happened to be there that semester.
And your ancestors, where did they all come from?
My mother's side were very simple. My mother's husband, my mother's dad, her maiden name was Eckert, and he was German. Her mother was Irish, and her name was Fahey. Her last name was Fahey. So that half of Dan's lineage is very similar to mine. But my father's side was French and Irish and German and a little Cherokee Indian. So it was kind of a mixed up.
And your mom, what was her first name?
My mother's name was Halcine, and they called her Hal.
And your dad?
And my dad was Eli. And we have a grandson, Eli. And we have a granddaughter that's Hallie from my mother, Hal. And so anyway, Dan and I met in late September, early October. No, just mid-October. And then in 47. We became engaged in January of 48. And were married in June of 48. And I was just had finished my junior year in college. I had skipped the 4th grade, so I was graduating a little early. And he was going to Loyola, and I was going to Mackle-Hart College. And very soon after our honeymoon, I found that I was expecting, so 10 months and 3 days after we were married, I had a baby, and I was going to college, and the nun, who was the dean of students there, said, well, you can finish in February because you went one summer. I'd gone to the University of Arkansas one summer and taken extra courses. You can graduate in February, have your baby in April, and come back in June and graduate with a class. So I had to take 19 units. And my mother was very insistent that I finish because I was an only child, and she gave permission in those days. I was not of age to get married if I promised that I would finish college. So I finished, and we had our little girl in April and finished in June, and then Dan finished in the following August, finished at Loyola the following
And how many children do you have?
6. We have 6 children. We have 4 daughters and 2 sons.
And what are their names?
And our oldest is Susan, and then Julie, and then Mary, and then Dan Jr., then Tim, and then Heidi.
And where do they all live and what do they do?
Susie lives in Sandpoint, Idaho. And she and her husband have 3 sons. And Julie lives in San Francisco, and she has 2 daughters and a son. And Mary lives in Jackson, California, and she has a daughter and a son.
Where's Jackson?
Jackson is about an hour from Sacramento. It's old gold rush country. Then Dan lives in Lake Tahoe, Dan Jr., and he has a daughter and a son. And Tim lives in Lake Tahoe, and he has 2 daughters. And Heidi lives in Alaska. She just moved to Alaska, in Anchorage, and she has 2 daughters. So we have 14 grandchildren. We have 6 great-grandchildren, and another one on the way, so about 6.5 great-grandchildren.
So, and did you keep up with your drama?
Well, at first my mother was quite disappointed because she had visions of my going on and being a great actress on the stage and everything, because since I was a little girl I'd been taking piano lessons and singing lessons and dancing lessons and twirling lessons. And sort of, I was the same age as Shirley Temple, so it was kind of the Shirley Temple era.
Mm-hmm.
But then she liked Dan so much and thought he was so wonderful, she gave in and let me get married. And then I was in drama, little theater groups. We lived in the Bay Area for a while, and I was quite active in children's theater, putting on shows for children. Then we moved to Tahoe, to Lake Tahoe. We moved to Lake Tahoe in 1960, and we were on the West Shore, which was very quiet. It was just after the Olympics, and another gentleman and I started a children's theater group up there. Many of the children were quite naive and unsophisticated, and they'd never seen a play, live play. So Cal Neva let us use their theater facilities, and we put on plays, and I was able to do some of the acting in many of the shows, and the children were so innocent that they didn't even know they were supposed to clap at the end of a production. I remember when we did Cinderella, and I played Cinderella, and at the end, the children were just all staring and looking, and nobody was clapping. So I had some stardust in my fingers, some little sparkly things. I walked out in the audience and threw sparkles at them all. So anyway, we've had a wonderful life. We've been married 60 years last year.
Oh, congratulations.
Had a wonderful time.
Yeah, okay, well let's back up a little bit. So you graduated, when did you graduate from Loyola then?
I came in and I started all over at Loyola as a freshman.
Right.
And let's see, I graduated just after Joan, actually. I
What?
took business administration
Okay.
and general business, and went to, let's see, I finished up my last course 3.5 years in the summertime, so the diploma didn't come at that time. So it's really the following year I graduated. They mailed the diploma to me.
We both finished in 49, but you got your
49.
diploma in 50.
Yeah.
And do you remember the first house that or the first home that you guys lived in after you were married?
Yes.
Where was that?
That was
Well, we had an
Rent.
apartment in Hollywood while we were going to school,
Right.
that was Reynolds.
rental. And then we went to Cleveland. We moved to Cleveland. Remember?
Yeah.
And we rented a house for a while, and then we bought our first little house. Amazingly different in price from today. Our first house was a very nice little 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath with a 1-car garage. We paid $19,500.
And what street was that on? Do you remember the address?
Beechwood. It was in Beechwood Village. So
Yeah.
it
Was that in
Edgewater Drive.
in
Edgewater
Cleveland?
Drive.
Cleveland.
It's in Cleveland.
Cleveland suburbs.
And you were working in Cleveland at that time? Is that when
Yes.
you were working with your dad?
Working for the HAUSERMAN company
Right.
at that time.
In what capacity? What were you doing?
Was in sales and accounting, various various departments, little at a time, training more or less.
And so how many years were you there in Cleveland then?
Well,
See.
we were there until
We bought another house because we kept having children every year. And we sold that and bought another house. And then we were there. Then we were Dan was transferred with the Hauserman Company to St. Louis. They had offices all over the country, and he was transferred to St. Louis. And we bought a home there. That was unbelievable. 3 acres, a gorgeous, gorgeous home, 42,500.
yeah, that was
What
great.
street, or where,
It
was
was
that on the
Claychester. It was in the town of Claychester, across from the Catholic Church. Then we were only in St. Louis for about 3 years, 2.5 years,
Yeah,
and we were transferred to San Francisco.
San Francisco.
And we lived in Menlo Park, a suburb, of course, of San Francisco. And then
That was in 1956 through
57,
60,
57, 58.
57, 58.
Then we moved to San Francisco, and we were there only a couple of years, and Dan felt that he was the youngest of the family, and there would be no way he could climb over 7 older brothers in the business. And so we had built a summer home up in Tahoe, and one day he came home and said, "I think we should move to Tahoe." And that was kind of a shock, because Tahoe was pretty primitive up in the North Shore at that time. There wasn't much going on. Wondered how we'd support ourselves and what we would do. But we moved up at the end of '60 to Tahoe.
Went in the real estate business, got a broker's license, and we're off and running.
Yeah.
So you lived where in North Lake Tahoe? I mean, where did you live?
Well, we had a summer home we had built on the West Shore in Homewood, and we lived, so we moved right into there. But we had quite a number of children going to school, you see. And so then we were trying to figure out how to earn a living. And one day we saw this sign go up on a piece of property in Tahoe City on an old motel. And there were no shopping centers yet in North Tahoe. There was one grocery store and a bank and a few things like that, but no real shopping center. So I came home at a different time from Dan, different appointments, and said, "Gee, did you see that for sale sign on that property?" And he saw it too, so we bought the property and ran it as a motel for 2 years with 5 children in a little tiny house, a 1,200 square foot house, and ran this motel, remodeled it a bit, just enough. And then we moved the units off the property, made apartments out of them, and started the first shopping center in North Tahoe. And we built the first building in '66, and then '68, '69, '70, '72, and built the last building in 2000. And it's called the Cobblestone. It's a Bavarian-style European shopping center in Tahoe City. We still own it.
And the kids all went to school up there then. Where did they go to school?
Well, at that time, they had no high school in North Tahoe. You had to go over to Truckee. So many of our children went to school in Truckee. They had, of course, busing back and forth.
Grade school in Tahoe.
Grade school was in Tahoe City. And then high
Was
school
it
was in
Catholic?
Truckee.
Did they have a Catholic?
No,
grade
we
school?
had catechism classes, and I taught catechism for a few years.
And what church? What parish?
Corpus Christi Church was the church.
In Tahoe
there,
City?
In Tahoe City.
Okay.
I've been there for about 70 years, I guess now.
Yeah.
Oh.
I was there when we came.
And remember the priest that was there?
Well, I remember they had several priests we had there. The one that we really were very, very close to was Father Mayo, Father Tony Mayo, and God bless him, he died on Christmas Eve 2 years ago. But he was a wonderful man, and
Father Mulligan.
and there was Father Mulligan, and there's there's so many, Father O'Neill. Every few years we get a different priest. It was a difficult parish for a priest because it was kind of isolated up there in Tahoe at that time. Now there's much more activity. But
You taught CCD?
Yes, not CCD. Yeah.
How many kids would you have usually?
Well,
In what age group?
we had, in the whole class, we had about 90 children in the whole, all the different grades. And so I probably had about 20 in my class, something like that.
And when did you start coming down here to the desert?
In the 1950s. My mother passed away in 1958. She was only 56 years old. And I was kind of going through a nervous situation with it, and being an only child. And so they suggested a little vacation, and we came down to Palm Springs for about 10 days.
Yeah.
That we fell in love with it, and then we'd come down on vacations from year to year.
Where would you stay when you would come?
There's a motel in Tahoe, in Palm Springs, called La Horizon, that was owned by Benita Granville Rather. Her husband owned Disneyland, or Disney World, the hotel in Disneyland. Rather, yeah. Benita Granville Rather. She was a movie star.
Yeah, I remember Benita Granville.
And so we would come down and stay at La Horizon. And then we started bringing friends down, and then we decided to buy. And we bought in Sunrise first, and then we bought in the Springs.
Yeah.
So.
And did you play a lot of golf and tennis and things like that when you were up in Tahoe and around? Did you guys ski and stuff too? Or when you were down here?
Down here in the desert.
It wasn't time at Tahoe because we were doing everything. You see, there was a new Tahoe, North Tahoe. You had to be on the fire department as a volunteer fireman. Everything that was started, someone had to help start it in the early days of Tahoe.
We had a real estate brokerage business going at the same time as the shopping center was.
Oh.
And having children at the
Yes.
same time.
Having kids.
1966, we started our first building in Cobblestone, built a house in Dollar Point, had a baby. We were selling real estate, and so.
Full active life. So since you've been down here in the desert, then you played tennis. Well, tell me what you did for recreation.
Played a certain amount of tennis and golf, both of them. I was better at golf than tennis, however.
You played golf as
I
a young
played
kid.
golf as a youngster.
Did you at the Springs? Did you know Hale and Mary Luff?
Very well.
Very well.
They
yes.
were real good friends. We had
Yes.
them over to Mission Hills, played tennis and
Yeah.
then I played both golf and tennis with Ted Agnew.
Yeah.
Right.
We were very
Friends
close
of-
friends of Ted Agnew.
Yeah.
I played golf with Ted Agnew.
Yeah.
Many times.
One of the cute stories about Ted Agnew was that, well, two quick stories, is that our grandson Eli was about 16. He was just taking up golf, and he was coming down to visit us, and he said, "Grandpa, can I go play golf with you?" And Dan said, "Yes, but I'm playing with Ted Agnew." And he said, "I'll have to ask him if it's all right if you come along." So he still laughs and says, "My first game of golf with my grandfather was with the former Vice President of the United States." But Ted Agnew took us to dinner one night with another couple.
I think he was a better golfer than Ted.
Probably.
He took us to Lord Fletcher's, Ted did, one night.
Yeah.
And it was really cute. They had a special table where they liked to have him seated. And he said, "I hear that you go to church a lot," to us. And he said, "And you pray a lot too, don't you?" And he said, "Well, you know, I had a friend back in Maryland, and he went to church a lot, and he prayed a lot." And I said to him, "No, don't you think maybe you pray too much?" And my friend said, "Well, when I get to heaven, if I prayed too much, so what?" Ted told us.
Yeah, he, Diane and I played mixed doubles with Ted and whoever he had. And so one time I was at the office and he called and wanted to know if Diane and I could play tennis with he and Barbara Sinatra over at the Sinatras.
Oh, yes.
So we
Yeah.
did, and
That must have
and
been
Frank
fun.
was there playing with Leo DeRocha, who was just really gracious to us and stuff. So that's something that we always remember.
That's
Those were the
wonderful
days. Huh?
Yeah, really. Now, and I know you've really been involved with the various parishes here in the valley. Tell us a little bit about that and some of your favorite priests. We still correspond with Father Ambrose.
Yes,
Oh,
we do
yeah,
too.
we
By
do.
email all the
By
time.
email.
He's wonderful.
Yeah.
We were going to Sacred Heart at first, And I had a nun who came down to visit us. I went to a school in Leavenworth, Kansas, St. Mary Academy, when I was in high school. And this nun came to visit us often, and she said, you know, they really could use your help over at St. Louis Church, because it's a poor church that needs help, and it's essentially more Hispanic, and they don't have a lot of money or help. So we said, well, we'll go over and try it. So we had been going to Sacred Heart, and we went over, and the priest there, they're from an order, the Sacred Heart of Jesus and Mary, an order priest. And Father Paul, he said, I went to him and I said, I love to decorate. Could I help with the Christmas decorations? And he said, oh, sure, you're in charge. So I thought, boy, this is unusual. So I was helping with the Christmas decorations, and in January I got a phone call from Father Paul, and he asked me to come to the parish council meeting. So I went to the parish council, and he said, we would like for you to be in charge of the fund drive. We're going to build a hall. And I said, oh my goodness. He said, well, we have a professional who you'll be working with, but we need to build this hall. So we had this professional, and we worked together, and it was his last job, and he really didn't do a very good job here. So we had to carry on our own to try and raise the funds. We thought at first it was going to cost about $1.5 million, but then the place was the wrong place for where we were putting the hall, but we didn't have any other land. And we got up to about $500,000, and we're having trouble with it. So then the city called us and said they would like to donate part of their street for us so that we could have a larger parcel and have a better spot for the hall. And so that was, of course, a wonderful shot in the arm, because then people were more excited about donating. And we had some major donors who helped us. And then the cost kept going up on the hall. It went up to, before we finished, it was $4 million. And I was chairman of the fund drive for about 10 years. And before we paid off the $4 million, but we had the hall built, and it's been wonderful because so many activities take place there, and they have classes for the Catholic children after school in the lower classrooms. So we've been very active in St. Louis Church ever since that started.
And I know you've done some traveling in the past, I believe. Can you tell me some places that you've traveled to?
Oh, golly, we just love to travel in the old days. Now the kids are so afraid we're going to travel someplace and get sick, so they keep discouraging us, keep reminding us of our ages, you see. We did a lot of traveling. It was wonderful. Even though we had the big family, there was always somebody who was willing to come in and help take care of the children while we traveled. I think one of our favorites would be when we went to Africa, to Kenya, Tanzania.
Kenya.
And we had friends who were living in Nairobi, and visited them, and they arranged for the trip, and we were able to go in a combi with just the driver and the guide all through those areas, Mombasa. We also been to Egypt twice, and we had some wonderful trips through there, some funny ones. It's too long a story, but there's some funny stories about it. And we were supposed to be bad luck because I had pneumonia when we were there. And many funny things happened, and every time anything would go wrong with the group, they'd say, it's you, you're bad luck, you're bad luck.
Jinx.
You're a jinx.
Jinx.
So we went to a market in a town in Egypt, and we were helping some little children, giving them some money. And the little child was retarded, and we didn't know it, and the little child told the crowd that we had stolen from him. And all the Egyptians turned on us. We couldn't speak Egyptian. And finally, there was a man who came out who spoke English and asked what had happened, and the other little child said, no, they gave us money. Didn't take anything. But it was kind of scary there for a few minutes in Egypt. We've been, we went on a wonderful tennis trip with Tennis America as good ambassadors for the United States. And we were in Australia, all through Australia. As a group that was started by, in the World War II, and Admiral Halsey's son.
Oh, yeah.
And you're supposed to be ambassadors for the United States, and you play tennis and get them to know you.
Bill Halsey, he played over at Sunrise, didn't he?
Yeah,
I
yes.
remember him.
We called and asked if we could go on the trip to Australia, and he said, are you A players? We said, no, we're probably B- players, but we're friendly. So he said, we like friendlies, and we don't have any room now, but if we do, we'll call you. And he called back in a couple of weeks and said we had some cancellations, so you could go. So we had a great trip there in Australia, and we've been all over Europe. And of course, where Dan had been, we went back to where he'd been on Mount Zugspitze.
I had one free trip to Europe.
Yeah, of course. And then we tried to follow some of the places where he'd been on his trip, and went up to Zugspitze where he had found that dagger and where the Germans had just retreated, and here were all these wonderful skiers relaxing and sunbathing. So we've been very, very blessed, really blessed. Healthy,
Certainly have.
6 healthy children and 14 healthy grandchildren and 6 great-grandchildren, and still in love after 60 years. And so we've been pretty doggone lucky.
Put up with each other very well.
Last year the children gave us a party, and they all came, and the grandchildren came down. And they did books. They did a book from the children and a book from the grandchildren. And they all wrote letters and pictures and things. And we thought at first it was going to be a kind of a
Roasting.
but instead it was like what they call a testimonial. And one of our grandsons is the only one probably who hasn't gone to college. He just went out of high school. He had trouble kind of with education. And he wrote his letter to us. They were to read the letters that what they thought about us. Very, very touching. He gets up, and big, strong guy, laborer, and he reads this beautiful letter he's written. He said, I kept saying, what will I say to my grandparents? How can I say what I feel to my grandparents? He said, I know what I'll do. I'll listen. And he said, I'm going to sit very close and listen. And when I've been married 60 years, I hope that I love my wife as much as my grandpa loves my grandma, and that my grandma loves my grandpa, and I'm going to learn from them. So I'll just listen. It was very touching, because some of the other letters were very sophisticated and very warm and friendly and loving, but coming from him, it was quite something.
That was.
Yes. He's now training to be a fireman.
Okay.
So.
Well, I usually, as we wrap things up, Dan, I usually ask someone like you who's been in harm's way, if you had any advice for young people that are going into harm's way these days, what helped get you through or might help them?
Well, the main thing is you have to have a love for the United States of America, a deep love for our country, and be willing to sacrifice like that when you're called upon to do it. Just go ahead, knuckle in and do it. It's worthwhile for everyone.
Good advice, Dan. Hey, thank you for your service to our country. Thanks for coming and sharing with us today. Joni, thanks for helping out
Yes,
too.
no, you're welcome.
So
Thank
great.
you for including me.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
You're
Putting
welcome,
up with, how
guys.
do you put up with these things like this?
I tell you,
I brought
we just love
I
this.
bought an
We learn
overnight
all
bag, just in case I